All right, claimed listeners and followers and watchers, I guess. Today I have a very special lady with me. Her name is Melissa. She's calling all the way from New York, and she has been a client of mine and a participant, a very active participant in the Claimed Group Coaching Program. And so today she's here to share with us her story. Melissa, thank you so much for coming. I know that this is probably not something that you do regularly, and I'm really grateful, and I really, really appreciate you being so brave, because I know, this is not, as I said, something you do every day, and I really, really appreciate you coming on board and sharing your story. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited. And, while being live is something I am really comfortable and familiar with, it's also new and different when it's about my personal life and not my business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I really appreciate it, because I know that, these subjects and these areas are quite personal and they can get quite vulnerable. There's a puppy in the background. Hello, puppy. Puppy or doggy. So that's why I'm saying that, this is a sacred space, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story, because it is personal. We can talk about our businesses and, of course, promote our success, and all of this is great. But when it comes to our personal life, it's a different story. So thank you. All right, so we'll begin with you, Melissa, telling us about yourself a little bit, and then we'll start with how did you find about my work and what brought you to this work?
Sure, absolutely. So I am, first and foremost, when we talk about the things that we identify with, I refer to myself often as a mompreneur, right? Like, it's my season of life that I'm in, where mom comes first. I have a 5-year-old son named Jack, and we live here in Geneva, New York, with our dog and our two fish. Our two fish named Molly, by the way. They're both named Molly. Which is funny. But building a business and allowing myself to really build my business around the schedule that I get to create as a mom. And when I came upon your work, which is, it's often a mystery, but yet it's not, right? Because between the algorithms and the amount of, social marketing, figuring out what it is we need, this is one of those really incredible moments that I'm quite pleased at how the algorithms partnered up what I'm able to see, because I came to some of your ads, and I think it was for one of your live workshops. That's what really got me. It was, coming and listening to your story, because it may as well have been me telling the story of my life, right? You shared so much vulnerably about yourself and your journey and what it was like to have to really learn how to embody the feminine, right? But up until that point, I feel like I wrestled so much with a career that was quite masculine, right? I was in finance for 10 years. And then I transitioned to being my own boss and being a business owner and being a single parent, and I had a household. And all of those things require a lot of active, what we come to know as, that sort of masculine energy. And certainly, even if you don't want to identify masculine or feminine, in the world of yoga, which is one that I operate in all the time, right? It's operating from this solar plexus place, and it's a place that we are so committed to in our society in almost this addictive way, right? We're addicted to the doing and the busyness of life, and we kind of go around wearing busy like a badge. But the reality is, I was learning how to transition into doing less and being more. And I had made some significant mini revolutions in my business and what I've been growing for the last 7 years, specifically since I left my 10-year career in finance, but certainly the entire 14 years that I've been building this business. And the reality was, I needed to start to take the things that I was teaching and preaching in my professional world and begin to truly apply them to my life. And the piece that was missing was how to move out of that masculine energy and how to move into the feminine. That's when I found you.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. I love that I love that you didn't even mention men or relationships or whatever. It's all about, here I was. And I think, in the webinar, this is where I begin. It's all about that live female success. As you said, the addiction to the busyness. We wear it as a badge. I'm an independent woman. Like, you subscribe to all of these agendas and you go, go, go. And then you realize that, not only this is affecting you as a woman in your professional life and everything, but actually it also affects us in relationships and how we relate with men. Yeah, so I'm grateful for algorithms as well. I know there's a lot of controversy there, but I'm grateful for Facebook. I advertise on Facebook because this allows me to access women like you who, I have a legitimate webinar where I share my story, and then if you resonate, let's get on a discovery call. So, and in terms of men, Melissa, do you want to share what your situation was? As much as you want, obviously, like, you share as much as you want here. But obviously the Claim Group Coaching Program is all about how to attract committed masculine men. So I know that you're also here, you signed up not only to, change that dynamic in your business and in your life, but also to start attracting different types of men.
Yeah, so I think the thing that stands out the most to me in terms of my dynamic with men and in relationships is, in the past, that energy that I was just talking about, that very driven, motivated, determined, independent, fiercely independent energy would initially attract a man. I think sometimes I felt like almost like a zoo animal, right? Like they were coming and like, what is this thing, right? And what initially attracted them would become the very thing that they would eventually resent, right? And I heard it said so beautifully recently by a man named John Wineland, whose work I know you're familiar with. And he was talking about how, women, please don't use the same strategies with us that you use in your businesses and in your work, right? Because it doesn't work. And I think that's really what happened for me, is like, I never knew how to shut that energy off. And so it carried over into the relationship. And I didn't know how to move from, the energy that I utilized in my work life into the energy that I really needed in my home life and in my relationships. But also what's even more profound beyond that is, since I started doing work with you, I realized, no, I don't actually need to even be in that energy all the time in my work either, right? I can learn how to truly embody this divine feminine energy, right? Which is very different than the toxic femininity we talk about in our culture, right? Which is like very weak, and it's all about like, we wear pink and bows and all that kind of thing. And it's no forgotten what it really means. But anyways, back to the relationship piece, that left me stuck for a really long time. I was in a pattern, and it was a pattern that I really found hard to break. So, yeah.
So I want to touch upon the work stuff, because I know you've been playing with these concepts that you go through in the claim process in relation to, in regards to men and relationships. And I know you've applied, some principles to your work. So, and this is actually, towards the end of the program in Module 5, we talk about magnetism and feminine leadership. And I know you're very interested in the subjects. And this is my also area of, further interest and development and all of that. So we'll touch upon that, because I think that's really important. That what I see a common thread in women is that, they're very, very successful like you, and, they're used to the business of it all. So they come for the men, because they want that result. But what they actually realize is like, oh, hang on, like there's an awakening in all the areas of your life and of their lives, particularly in their career or businesses. And so we discuss this subject as well. Obviously, this is not a central point for us in the program, but we definitely touch upon that. So I'm curious to hear about that towards the end of the interview. Now, before we jump into, talking about the discovery call in the program and your aha moments, you said that you were stuck in a pattern with men where you didn't know how to shift from that masculine to feminine. How did that like manifest on a practical level? Like what would you do or not do with men that you really saw that's a pattern that you can't get out of?
It looks like the only child who's always fighting to have her way, right? Which I am an only child, so that's why I giggle. But it was sort of this need to always be right, this need to have control over, the things that we do and the direction of our relationship. It even, extended itself to the bedroom. Let's be honest here, right? Like I had to control what went on there as well. And what ends up happening is it's exhausting, right? Because it's not what we're meant for naturally as women. And so then I would end up resentful and not have any idea why. Right. But it was a lot of arguments. It was a lot of, just really always trying to assert myself and my points and my plans and my control and influence over any and every situation.
Right.
God,
Which is so familiar. I mean, I've been there, and I think women listening or watching this, I was like, oh my God, yes, and well, the great news is that there's a different way. And that's why I'm so passionate about, this program and this work, because when the transformation happened with me, and it was all about me. It had nothing to do with men. Once I started doing this work, and now that I'm seeing so many women go through the process, when they do the work, it looks so different on the other side, But anyways, we'll get there. So, okay. So you were in this pattern with men and in your work and really trying to kind of figure this whole thing out, and it was exhausting. And so through the algorithms on Facebook or whatever, you see my webinar and then you sign up, you watch. And then at the end of the webinar, as we know, there's an invitation to sign up for a free discovery call. And so you did that. And I think your call wasn't with me initially, but I know we talked with you. So I think your call first was with Barbara. Yeah. And then with me. So tell us a little bit more about what happened on that discovery call and what actually motivated you to, invest in yourself, say yes, and sign up for the program.
So a lot happened on that call. First of all, it was simply the power of validation, right? Of sitting with another woman who completely understood where I was coming from, who could validate those feelings, that experience. Like, I'm like getting a little emotional talking about it, because I just remember Barbara's so fantastic. And so were you, right? Because I got to have that second call with you. But I think the game changer was really doing an embodiment practice on the call, right? Dropping into my body. And what occurred to me in that moment was like, oh, right, I know this. I just don't know how to practice it on a practical level. Like the moment that I could be led into my body and remember all of these truths and all of this wisdom that's already in there, it was like, okay, I know that I am in safe hands here. I know this is the work that I'm meant to be doing. And the call itself had ripple effects over coming days in different dynamics, from my son to my son's father, and just, having conversations with friends and with my team in my business. So I knew that it was time and that this was the work I needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know you had a call with Barbara, and then you were kind of like, were you still thinking about it? I can't remember the context of why we jumped on the discovery call. Or maybe I just messaged you and I said, did you have any questions for me, or do you need that reassurance? And we jumped on a call, and I remember we talked, and then, we found a solution that works for you. And then you said yes, and you signed up.
Yeah. I think the reason why I needed that conversation, Anna, quite frankly, is I wanted to go to the source, right? I needed that. I personally have no problem investing money and resources, time, energy, all of it, right? When it's for my business. But the moment someone asked me to put a dollar sign on my own personal fulfillment and happiness, it was like, wait a second, what? What am I doing here? I can't do that. I got to take care of my son and my business and my this, that. And it was coming to that second call and being in your presence and the energy that I felt through that connection, knowing once again that I was in this very safe container where I was understood, I was seen, I was heard, and I knew that transformation would be possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that, because sometimes you need that reassurance. And thanks for bringing this up, because I see this a lot in women. And that's why sometimes we have to have difficult, hard conversations, because we're so used to putting everything else first, like as you said, well, I can't put that money on me because, yeah, I got bills to pay. And, obviously I have a son and a business and all of this. So all of these head conversations are going on. And actually that is part of the, well, I don't want to call it part of the problem, but essentially what we're doing in the program is learning these tools of you get the best piece, and you are the prize and you come first. And so I see this so many times when a woman says yes on the call and invests in herself, a lot of the times for the first time in her life, especially, we're talking about, a pretty good investment, so to say, just in that fact or that act that she's doing, investing in herself, things start to shift and change because she's taking herself seriously. She's investing in, it's not about everybody else anymore, but it's about her. And this is the first step to the actual transformation. All right, awesome. And now we come to the program. So I'm curious to hear from you, Melissa. What were some of your biggest aha moments now that we know what was your situation before the program, why you signed up, what happened on the call? So you enter this journey in this space, and so what were those biggest aha moments as you went through this journey?
It's interesting. Some of the aha moments were things that I had figured out intellectually and had surrendered to mentally, but I began to feel and understand emotionally and with a greater depth and wisdom. Things like the fact that control is an illusion, right? Trying to control relationships or control, like making sure things turn out okay, or, always being the person to get out the door first, right? Because you're not leaving me, I'll leave you first, right? All these kinds of patterns stem to this, this idea that, somehow I had control over it, and that brought safety, right? And then confronting the idea that somehow, sitting back, I could still feel that sense of safety and security, sitting back into, leaning back into my soul, leaning back into myself, leaning back into our community and our work, that I would be safe doing that. And some of these things cannot truly be understood until you experience them. Right. And I continue to reaffirm those lessons by showing up every week. Right. And I hesitate to tell you this, but I think it's really hysterical that I ever doubted what I invested in this program, because the ability to keep showing up and continue in this incredible community of women, the connections, the friendships, it's priceless. Right. And so I don't want to tell you to raise your price, but
I'll put a note to that.
I'll tell you, it's really, really incredible. And one of the other things I think I confronted, and I talked about it actually today in one of our calls, is this idea, and I know you do some ads around this and some, writing and podcasts around this idea of where have all the good men gone, right? I don't think I ever went there consciously, but yet that's how I showed up for the men who came into my life, with a level of distrust, with this sort of overarching assumption that you'll never meet my standards, that you'll never fully be able to show up for me. And what's been happening through this work, you know, as we move forward and I start to get out in the world and date, is the realization and the conclusion, which is what I came to the call with today, that there are just so many fantastic, amazing men out there in the world, right? And we need to stop overlooking them for the sake of, you know, this, again, the illusion of control, or, you know, the fact that we are not looking at the things in ourselves. We're not holding the mirrors up for ourselves to see, why am I attracting that dynamic into my life? What is feeding this relationship, right? Because when you really start to look at that, it becomes clear pretty quickly, and it's humbling, but it's also really empowering to know that, yeah, there's plenty within myself that I can actually release. It's not even about, you know, becoming something different. It's about releasing a lot of those limiting beliefs. That's, you know, one of the most incredible parts of this program is I have to keep going back to module 2 on limiting beliefs, because in practice, more and more comes up, right? There's plenty that I can come up with on an intellectual level, but until I'm actually in the moment and, you know, on the date or in the discussion, or, you know, in those practical moments where rubber meets the road, so to say, right? That's when the limiting beliefs really surface. And then I've got to go back like, oh, this is really interesting. Or it'll be just like a sexy new version of the same one I've been dealing with my whole life. And I've got to go back like, oh, hello, old friend. Like, let's handle this again.
Yeah, wow. A lot of powerful moments here, and I want to comment on them, Melissa, because this is so important and actually really common for women who do the work. Let me ask you first. So you mentioned yoga a few times. So I'm assuming, I mean, obviously you're very self-aware. It's very clear in the language that you use and how you even describe these things. So I'm assuming you've done quite a bit of work on yourself before entering this journey. So do you feel the biggest difference with this program is the embodiment element of it, or the process? Like, how would you describe that?
I think both, because I don't think you could have one without the other, right? You have to go through the process. It's like, you know, I know the quote, you know, the only way out is through, right? And it's so true about this work, but the process that you go through, there's really no option unless you really take it on an entirely intellectual level and you never develop a feminine flow practice. There's no option but to begin to truly embody all of who you are, right? And bringing your values and your essence and your flavor to the table, and it all just becomes part of you. It's not just this abstract thing that's sitting out there.
So for a woman who, because we get quite a few women who sign up for discovery calls who've done a lot, you know, they've done the meditations, they've read the books, they've done other programs that are relationship based or not, they work with other coaches. How would you describe in your own words of what this is? And you did this a little bit, but you know, again, we're sitting here and talking intellectually about these things, and you're right, you can't understand it fully until you actually experience it. But for a woman listening who's been there and who's like, oh God, I'm still not breaking through, you know, the patterns, and what else do I need to do, and has not done any embodiment, how would you describe the experience within the process?
So I'm going to answer that in 1 second, but I just want to first attend to one piece that you just said. So the idea of breaking through, right? I don't know how many women I have in my life or that I've encountered in this program, in my small group, who I could imagine in all of the years that we've done the other work, right? We've gone to therapy, we've read the books, we've, you know, done all these other practices. That there's a subconscious fear of a breakthrough, because doesn't that even sound scary? You're breaking something. What are you breaking through to? What's on the other side? You know, and what's the safety net, right? And so for me, what this program has truly been is it's been alignment of who I am as a person, with how I show up in the world. It's embodiment of the true essence of who I am, being able to honor and respect and revere truly what it means to embody femininity. And to have this incredible community where we not only have the guides to do the work, right? So you feel like you're in great hands, but we also have all of these people, sisters, women, however you want to refer to it. I mean, some of these people have become like some of my greatest soul friends, right? But the actual container to fall back into. So that subconscious fear goes away. I could have gone on to do probably like 20 more years of talk therapy, and I never would have reached some of the points that I've reached in this program so quickly. Like there are these aha moments. It's almost like a combination lock, you know, that begins to like come together week after week. It's like one more number clicks into place, because when you are, and now I'm going to geek out on this a little bit. You know, there's something I loved back in my 20s that was the experiential learning cycle, right? And in that cycle, you've got intrapersonal reflection where you're going within, you're taking your experiences and you're figuring out, what are my thoughts, what are my feelings on this, and then you move into this interpersonal space where you're dialoguing that out with other people, and that's very much like traditional talk therapy. But where we seem to fail as a culture is moving into the next place and the next place. So the next place after that is transpersonal. Like, how, now that I've really looked at this, now that I've talked it out, how does this inform how I show up in the world? And I don't think I ever leave a call where I've brought a challenge or a question or even a win where it doesn't change how I show up in the world, because I'm asked to truly go into that, and not just on a thinking level, but to go into my body and really be with that thing, right? So it changes how I show up in the world. And then you take that and it informs the next experience of that particular thing, right? So you have this cycle, and that cycle of growth is like, that's so powerful. And it's not that you never come back to some of these patterns or these behaviors or you know, challenges that you've had in the past. But when you come around to them every time, there's something a little bit different about you. There's something a little bit different about how you show up in the world because of this process, right?
Wow. I mean, I'm just listening to you and being like, what? You know, I mean, and as, you know, when I listen to him and describe this program, like, who came up with this program? Like, what? Like, you know, it's just so bizarre to hear you say this on such a deep, embodied level. I mean, obviously, even though I do relate to your experience and I know exactly what you're talking about, but I've never been where you are, Melissa. I've never been a woman who goes, I mean, I have been through this process, but I haven't been in the container that you have been. I've never had a coach who, you know, got on a group coaching call with me and said, Melissa, let's drop in and close your eyes. And what is this, you know, or like, I've done the worksheets here and there, but it's just so interesting. And you talk about some really like very deep personal growth here, you know, and that's what we see with women. We always talk about this is not linear, you know, it's not a business program where you come in and then you get your 3-step thing or the formula or whatever. And then you gotta like, just do more of that, what work, you know, it's constant. It's like that hero's journey that we talk about, and it's cyclical and it goes up and down and things like that. So, wow, you describe it so beautifully. I'm just listening to you. I'm like, yeah, indeed, it's really a process, you know, and we do have women in the program who expect results right away, or they get into the program, they haven't even done their flow or whatever, and they're like asking all these questions about dating. We kind of roll our eyes a little bit, but we also understand that This is what other programs are about. So we're like, 2 questions. Where are you in the program? Are you doing your feminine flow? So yeah, thank you for that. I think a lot of women will relate to that, because that is the missing piece, like the embodiment part of it. You're right. We can talk about it forever. We do all these things. We intellectually understand, but I always talk about, like, how does it feel when you say, I am worthy of a great man? Like when you said there's so many amazing men, that there's so much resonance there. You feel that, not only you intellectually, oh yeah, they're great men around, maybe, and you can tell yourself that as much as you want, but if you actually don't embody that, and you're right, you show up like this in the world, because you might not even think that, but if it's in your body, if it's in your system, you go on a date with that belief system about men, your world will change and the men will change. And I remember your post. I thought it was so creative and so awesome, because your post in our Facebook group started with like the names of the men, right? You were like Ben and Steve and John. And I was like, wow. And then you just described a reality that is so different from what a lot of women struggle with. And I could see that as I was reading this, I could resonate and feel how much appreciation you have for men, and how, as you said, we just don't see that because we constantly look for evidence of how they have let us down, and that assumption that they will not live up to my standards and things like that. So with this process, we change that. I want to comment on what you said.
I want to qualify that really fast, though, Anna.
Yeah.
So for everyone who's listening, right? So those aren't all the men on my, that I'm dating.
Right. Hey, but there's no shame in dating 10 men at a time. If you can do it, have the time for it.
It was just that realization that, as I began to do the work, it was allowing me to really just lean back into my own network of men, like the men around me, and they were just showing up for me in these very big, beautiful ways, like offering help and, stepping in to take care of things with no expectation of anything, right? It was just like they were just giving of themselves and their time and their energy. And even my son's father, whom, I've had a challenging relationship with in the past, that has begun to flourish. And how he shows up for us is very different. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful because it's in my ability to just be humble in my own energy, right? To know that, like, I don't have to do everything. Yes, I can. I understand that, but I don't have to. I don't want to, right? I want to be able to lean back and know that I can be cared for and that I can be nurtured and that I'm safe and I'm supported. And it's amazing that when you trust in that way, when you assume trust, that it just shows up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a video on trusting men, or more like distrusting men. And I said, I invited a woman to think about the other side. Imagine you're a man and you're walking around with women constantly mistrusting you, like right from the get-go. And you always have to assert yourself and prove that you can be trusted. No great masculine, healthy masculine committed man would be up for that, to start the dynamic with that. Because, right. I don't want to start any relationship with something that is already not based on trust. And, trusting is vulnerable and sometimes it's scary, but anything worthy, you're a mother, I'm a mother, it's, you got to open your heart and you got to go there. Great love comes with also, I don't want to say sacrifice, but it is. As mothers, we know, we constantly, not constantly, but, there is that thing of like, I love this child so much. What if something happens to her, but you go there because that's what's worth living for and experiencing. So, yeah.
And you know what word I love for that more than sacrifice is surrender. right?
Mm.
Like we can
Yeah.
surrender ourselves to that love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trust.
So, Melissa, so we talked about, your biggest realizations, the embodiment piece, the showing up. I love that you said you consciously might not even understand or realize that you have that belief we're all the good men, but as you start doing this work, it actually, like, that's this whole process is about excavation of that. It's like, wow, I really do think that or believe that. And so digging deep and going through the cycles, doing the work. So, where are you now? So, we know your situation before the start of the program. And what's your dynamic, or how do you feel now? What has changed and how you show up in the world and with men?
So I think that the thing that I feel the most is this sort of freedom, right?
Mm.
Um, and that it's so funny because the way I can describe this is like back in, let's see, 2015, so 6 years ago, before I was pregnant with my son, I decided to end my relationship with alcohol because it was like an unpredictable one, right? Like I partied a lot in my 20s, my 30s, and so that element was just like, I don't need this in my life, right? And all of a sudden there was this sense of freedom because there was no um, unpredictability. There was no room for, the pain and the heartache that could come from like having an argument because someone had one too many drinks or whatever. That same freedom is the freedom that I feel right now when it comes to men, and it changes everything about how I show up in the world because I'm no longer walking around with this, protective cloak of ultra independence, right? like look at me, I could do it all, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm able to just like, it's kind of like walking around in wool in the middle of the summer. Who wants to do that, right? So it's kind of like shedding all of those layers and and being able to just like feel the breeze on your skin and to feel the sunlight on your face and to really just bask in all of it. That's how I feel. And obviously one of the biggest things is that realization that I just shared with you, that there's just so many amazing men out there in the world. And what it has also done, Anna, is it has healed a lot of the significant male relationships in my life. From the relationship with my father, who I've been in therapy for years around that. That would be like a whole other podcast. Um,
I'm sure. Yeah.
like all of a sudden one day, I think I was like in the middle of module 3, and we started talking on the phone, and we just have these really normal, open, beautiful conversations now. It's great. Um, how I show up for my son has changed, right? There's no longer this like, um, semi-unparented inner child that's throwing temper tantrums about having to parent her child, right? If that makes any sense, right? Like, I love being a mom, and I love that I can just like get into my body and feel how much I love to be a mom, and I can show up and be mom, and that's it, right? It's not complicated. I think as I'm speaking, what is the most powerful thing is it's like untangling all the stuff, right? Untangling the years of limiting beliefs, untangling the years of stories we tell ourselves, untangling the years of drawing in the experiences that validate those beliefs, right? And when you begin to like untangle all these things, all of a sudden they're just not that scary.
Mm-hmm.
And what's left is something that is a lot more pure, is more accessible, and that's where I'm at right now. I feel like when I show up, it's, what you see is what you get. And yes, I mean, when you're embodying the feminine, there's a whole lot more to it, right? Because we're like, we're these rich, incredible creatures, but it's available now. It's not beneath that armor anymore.
Oh, this is just so beautiful. And oh, thank you, Melissa, for bringing in, these metaphors that are so beautiful and very, very true and very precise, because I experienced this. And every woman that I interview, I obviously, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on my own life and how I live life, and I know it's so different from what most women experience in their life, but that the simplicity, the purity, the clarity is there for me every day. It doesn't mean that I don't experience challenges or, heartache. Like 2 days ago, I had a massive meltdown being unmothered in my pregnancy and like crying all day and, all of that. But you're right. It's like the untangling of things. And again, embodiment for me, because I've been doing this for many, many years now, really is the practice. And I'm still mesmerized by it. And I still am like, wow, this whole dropping into the body. And after like a 45-minute flow, if you're going through something big, and, we do this in the program together, it's like there's that safety and trust where you go to the source of like who you are, and that that no matter what happens, everything's going to be okay, and that you don't need to build these walls, and everything could be so much simpler if you just allow and feel. And when you feel, you also realize, obviously through the program, we teach practices that are starting step by step, where we create a lot of safety in the body. And then it's like, like my relationship with my husband is quite simple. Like we do not, it's not that we don't argue, but when we do, it's like, and it's a totally, how men experience embodied women like me and you is a totally different experience for them. And that's why I always tell women in the program, what a gift. When you do this program, obviously you'll see the transformation yourself, but what a gift to give to a man to show up and not be this frantic woman who is hanging on to her control, to be always right, to know where this is going, because she's just so scared. Essentially, this is all fear, or I'm not good enough. I feel like I'm not good enough to shed that wool or the cloak or whatever, so you can see who I am. So therefore, I'm going to like make up all these stories and things. And yeah, beautiful. All right, we have to finish up. Melissa, I'd love to just keep talking to you for hours, because what you're saying is so beautiful and I'm so curious. So before I ask you one last question, I really want to touch upon what you mentioned in the beginning of how this work also, because it's super clear now that you're describing all these transformations and things that happen, how it can not affect your work and how you show up in your business. Right? So tell us a little bit more about how that has influenced in terms of how you show up as a feminine essence woman in business, and in your professional life, because I think this is the next level. And towards the end of the program, I share and I actually say, magnetism, and here's how you can apply this into your life. Obviously, this is not the focus of the program, but a lot of women do experience that. So I'm really curious in terms of how that affected that other area of your life.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Anna, because I think I alluded to this in the beginning of the interview, and I shared with you, I started to do a lot of this work in my business, in the last few years. But what came to me, and was so powerful when I started this program, is that I was taking in the concepts of doing less, being more, using my masculine energy for systems and strategy, but then, being able to kind of flow with the work. But yet I was coming to my team and I was delivering this still as a very masculine energy, right? As almost like a manager, right? And in my world, in my work, there's no such thing, right? Like we don't manage in this industry. I'm in network marketing, and it's all about being a leader. And leadership starts with being able to lead yourself. And so this allowed me to truly understand how I wanted to lead myself and what energy I wanted to be in as I led my team. And what's so beautiful is, once again, peeling back the layers, the illusion of control and all that kind of thing. And the more that I just allow myself to be in my body and to feel my way through my own experiences and to show up with joy. You know, I've had weeks where I've gone away, or, you know, I've taken a significant amount of time out and maybe gone on a date or done something fun with a man, that my business will flourish even more than when I'm physically attending to it, right? And I know what's behind that. And it's not woo-woo. There's so much, you know, there's so much science. There's so much behind it. That has been a game changer for me, because it's a reminder that, you know, that happiness is that inside job. And this is part of my happiness. Part of my happiness is like owning who I am as a human and being okay with the fact that we are different. I'm different. You know, I've done a lot of work in women's equality and that kind of thing, and I believe in it strongly, but I also believe in recognizing our differences and celebrating them. And that is just a huge game changer in my work. And it will continue to be, because I feel continued depth in these like excavations, right? Mm-hmm. And the deeper I go, the more I'm really truly able to get to that pure essence. And what's really powerful is my industry is highly dominated by women. And when you as a woman can sit in that space and be present in that way, it's amazing what it unlocks for other women, right? It also triggers a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I've also learned to recognize what it is that's triggering, because I've once felt it within myself, right? And so I can have those kinds of really sensitive conversations and hold space for people in that way. Yeah. Sometimes I'm almost speechless about this, which is unique because I feel like I have words for everything, but this is something that I know will continue to unfold for years to come. It's powerful work.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's so interesting because I think you are one of the few women that actually works in a mostly female-dominated industry, where a lot of women that we work with are mostly in male-dominated industries because they're so, you know, like lawyers and, you know, bankers and all of that. So, yeah. And when we talk about women coming together, you know, women learn through resonance and relate to other people through that resonance, not intellectually. So I love what you're sharing, because it's when we come together, and that's why this container, you mentioned the community, is so powerful, because when we see all together, it might be like 40 of us or 50 of us on a call, and when we see a woman completely break down, you know, in the depths of the depths, and she's like in her own process, and you witness that, and you're also with your eyes closed, you're in the body, there's that alchemy that happens, because women for thousands of years have done this together. You know, it has never been a lonely individual journey like it has been for a lot of men. So yeah, I love that this has ripple effects to the women that you are working with, and being essentially like, that's what feminine leadership is about. And that's my also next, you know, area of development and exploration, especially bringing that embodied sense to it. All right. So thank you so much, Melissa. Last question is for women listening who have been where you have been before. You know, maybe they have been maybe they're now, actually, for women who are right now where you have been before, they're in that transition, they're stuck in their patterns, they're exhausted, you know, they're attracting men that they don't want to be attracting. What would you tell them, and why would you recommend signing up for a discovery call to really explore what this is about, whether this is the right fit for them, and also if they do feel that this is the right fit, why would you recommend signing up for the program and going through the process?
So, as I said before, I mean, the work is invaluable. It will impact every area of life. And that stuck feeling is so often misalignment of our values. It's being disembodied, right? Like being outside of ourselves, like watching this life unfold that doesn't even feel like ours, right? Like, how did I get here? There's so many women that I've talked to who are like, how did I even get here? Right. And so I don't think there is a more efficient place, right? I want to speak to the language of the women who are where they are, right? Because that's what it was for me. It was like, oh boy, okay, there's 5 modules, it's 10 weeks. Now we know for sure I'm not going away for a very long time. Like my 10 weeks have passed. But transformations did happen during that time, right? But it's just that it becomes even more rich as time goes on because we've had time to cultivate relationships with one another in the group. And, and so, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, I wonder if this could be for me, there's absolutely no commitment to a discovery call. Why not have a conversation with another woman who can see you where you're at? Because that in itself will be powerful. But also, I will challenge you to find a more efficient path than being able to come into a program where you get all of these elements, all of these components in the same place. I don't think it exists. I don't. That's it. That's all I have.
Well, that is the most powerful testimonial and recommendation I've heard, Melissa. So, wow, I'm deeply humbled by your story, by your sharing, and by these words. And again, every time I hear a woman talk about this, I'm like, who came up with this? Like, this sounds amazing. And if you knew, Melissa, how I put this program together, it was literally like week by week. I was scrapping things together, and like in the process. And I had it was actually 11 women who were in the beginning. Barbara was part of it, in the beginning. And it was like this small group, tiny group of women that I was doing the coaching calls and asking and putting this all together as we went along. And now, I mean, I didn't even expect what this will become, and what transformations and all these amazing women. You're right, our community is like, I can't wait to get to the States and have an event and with everyone when we do, embodiment practices together and all of it and the next level. And so, yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, Melissa. We'll see you on the other side. I'm sure women listening are, because we've had quite a few women join, and then they were like, Melissa, I listened to your interview. Hello, I'm here because of you. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
I will also offer that if anyone wants to reach out and ask questions of someone who is in the program, I'm here. And I'm the only Melissa Killelea on Facebook, so you can find me.
That's an advantage. Might be a disadvantage too, depending on how you look at it, but yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Melissa. I'll see you on the other side, as I said. And just so grateful for you and for your energy. Thank you.
Anna, actually, before you end, I want to say one more thing to you. The way you put this program together, as you just described it, is just another testimony to how authentic the work is, right? Because you allowed it to unfold with the women who were already there with you. Mm-hmm. And now, like, as we move through this container, yes, there may be modules and curriculum, but the true curriculum is all of us showing up to the calls every week, right? And it's so powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be
yeah, thank you.